at every level.
Nice.
And one of the things I support is 100 publicly funded candidate campaigns and elections. And that means you can't be a multimillionaire financing your own campaign, and you can't take all this money from the top 1% economic elite that, in the industries like the fossil fuel industry, the gambling industry, the smoking industry, the insurance industry, and the healthcare industry. But we have to stop this because it's leading to all of these problems. And so what I want is you get so many signatures on a petition, you trigger a process, and then you get 100% clean public money, and it's a level playing field. All the candidates have to debate. Everything is audited, and you can only spend it on legitimate campaign activities. So you can't, take a vacation, for example. You got to spend it legitimately on campaign activities. And I want to take all private money from all sources out of our elections, and make sure that when we elect people at the city, county, and state level, that they're elected with 100% publicly financed candidate campaigns and elections. And I'm well aware of the Citizens United decision about 10 years ago that basically said private money is great, the more the merrier, which of course has corrupted our democracy.
They said money was speech. Money is speech. I've never heard my money talk, but whatever, I guess.
Well, that's nuts. Okay, so but because Citizens United is controlling nationwide, there is a weakness in what I'm suggesting here, but I fixed it, and I will fix it by changing the state constitution. And so I would be open to a constitutional convention that's going to get private money out of elections, and maybe there's another reform that we can consider. But the key one for me is our politics are corrupted by private money.
Right.
We have to get private money out. And when people run for office, I just want them to talk to constituents and have meetings and figure out what the people want. And then they go to Sacramento or a board of supervisors or a city council, and they decide what's in the public interest. And I want to make sure they don't waste any time meeting with lobbyists. I would ban that, by the way. So I would get a constitutional amendment in the state constitution that any elected representative in California, they are barred from meeting with any lobbyist. Zero. You can't do it. And if you do, you get fired. And then the second thing is when you seek public office, you agree to the rules of 100% publicly financed campaigns. You follow all the rules. You get audited. You don't engage in anything that's improper, and everything has to be transparent and audited. Because we don't want people.
I love the idea of public finance elections. Instead of just saying, okay, here's a recall election, and it's just like 46 candidates all running in different directions. You could actually get people on the stage, and you could have good conversations. Have like Lincoln Douglas debates, like have famous debates that like transcend your own time, because you got two people that just really care about the issues, who's really just trying to sort it all out. And yeah.
But again, and I'll telegraph this to you, because of Citizens United by the U.S. Supreme Court, they found that money was speech embedded in our Constitution. I believe it's a lie. I believe it was a wrong decision. And of course, the only way we can get around that is to change the composition of the Supreme Court and reverse that decision, or we have to change the Constitution using Article 5. That's the U.S. Constitution. But we'll have to fight that battle down the road. But in terms of California, if we can get a ban on elected representatives meeting with lobbyists and a ban on private money in elections throughout the state at every level, and I'm including federal, state, regional, county,
Good.
is because of Citizens United, rich people can set up an independent expenditure committee, and then there's no limit, of course, and then they can start attacking a candidate who they may not like. Let's say the candidate wants to ban fossil fuel burning permit, which is what I support. And that's another thing. If I became the governor, no fossil fuel permit for drilling or fracking. If the day I'm sworn in, I will not approve a single one. They'll all stop. Just keep in mind, Newsom's approved 121 this year. Okay, but anyway, so but the
Yeah.
way you deal with Citizens United is that you require transparency, and so the top 1% economic elite, they set up an independent expenditure committee. They have to disclose how much money they're spending in a 12-hour period, and then whoever they're attacking, whatever politician they're going after, I want to make sure that that politician or that person seeking office, they automatically within 12 hours of the attack, which is often radio, television, newspaper attacks, the candidate who's the subject of the attack gets an additional 3-to-1 match. So whatever $1 the rich people spend to take out the person running for office, the person seeking the office, they automatically get an extra $3 per $1 put in by the rich people. And so after a few election cycles, the rich people will figure out, well, all we're doing is giving a bunch of more resources to the people we're trying to defeat. So after a few election cycles, I believe the private money will be done. They won't participate in elections because they know when independent expenditure committees, the people that are very wealthy, they come in to manipulate election campaigns and elections. Once they realize whoever they're attacking, and that person is attacked, it's a 3-to-1 match, meaning they get more money than what the rich people are spending. And I believe after a few election cycles, even though we got Citizens United, that flawed decision, I believe the private money would be, in effect, banned from our elections forevermore in the state of California.
Net neutrality. Where are you at on net neutrality?
I'm for it, and anybody who uses the internet, it should be equal service all the time. There shouldn't be barriers manipulated by the high-tech industry. So internet access, it's equal access for everyone, whether you're rich or poor or business or non-business.
School choice.
School choice? I am for investing additional money in low-performing public schools and making them high-performing public schools.
Do you believe in magnet schools?
Well, magnet schools could be part of a public school system.
Right.
It's often tried.
Right.
But basically, there are these private interests who want to set up essentially private schools using taxpayers' money.
Right.
Sometimes on religious basis, sometimes on, they want to get the best students that they can find in the public school system and then put them into their school. And then the kids that are having difficulties, of course, they don't want them.
I went through, I was valedictorian of my high school, and great for me, right? Congratulations for me. But I feel like in hindsight, all I kind of displayed was a crazy obedience to authority instead of like actually thinking for myself. So I'm wondering, how was your public experience, public school experience? Was it like the teacher's the dictator and then everybody else just follows the one person in charge, or was it more like freedom and democracy? Being in a democracy, you would think that we're young Americans, right? So we need to learn how to use all these freedoms and our civic duty and all the rest. So learning how to get along, that wasn't even part of the curriculum in, the 13 years of my childhood that they took.
Well, I'm 69. I came of age during the 1960s, and the 1960s had two powerful forces going on. One was nonviolent mass movements, the gay rights movement, the anti-war movement.
60s, thank you. Thank you for the 60s. I appreciate everything you guys did.
and by the way, they still need to play out, okay?
Okay.
Like gay rights, for example, we still got a ways to go. Women's rights, we still got a ways to go. Of course, the war mindset for the Pentagon and the foreign policy establishment in Washington, fighting these unnecessary foreign wars. There's still an anti-war movement that started in the 60s.
Right.
It needs to play out.
Yeah.
But anyway, the nonviolent mass movements of the 1960s, they were very powerful, and I want to re-energize all of those movements and have them play out where there's more freedom and liberty and privacy and more opportunity, and I see that as an important thing. And by the way, the corporate mass media, they want to denigrate and mock the 1960s mass movements, but of course, they're doing that for a reason, and that is that they don't want Americans to know that young people in the 60s started mass movements that led to a lot of progress in America.
That's why we got to change schooling. I don't know if you ever heard of Sudbury model schools, but essentially you walk into those doors, freedom and democracy is respected as soon as you walk in. So they have like student councils, and they make pretty much all their decisions. I think they even hire and fire the teachers there too. So I feel like I'm coming from school choice, not from the right, but from the left. And so I want freedom and democracy in my public education, and if I can't get into the school boards or whatever and get that, then it feels like to me, then, you know, most of the time school choice is like your right-wing conservatives, and there's a lot of, you know, sort of crazy alternatives out there, but there's freedom schools, there's there's black schools, they started freedom schools to teach like civics and whatnot.
Wait, let me tell you the model I'm going to do if I become the governor.
Yeah.
It's the Finland model.
Okay.
If you look at the Finland model, there are no private schools. There's no religious schools. There's no private sector schools. It's all public. So the Finland school system, it's all public. It's heavily financed, and people can get a very good education. All the teachers are unionized. The teachers are paid high salaries, you know, once they get credentials. There's less homework, and when the Finland students get tested by other nations, they're always in the top 5 or 10. Anyway, okay, so Finland is, in other words, we have problems in low-performing public schools. The way to solve them is to convert all of them into high-performing public schools. I will put additional investment in the public school system, so it's high quality. I'm also going to expand it so it's cradle to grave. So let's say you finish your school, and then you do a career and you want to change your career, but you want additional training or education. It's lifelong learning. You can still go back and learn it. You know, if you want to go find a different job. So I'm all for high quality education, and this is, by the way, one of the key things in my platform, which I'll send you in an email. But I want to enact high-quality health care and education, cradle to grave, for all the residents of California. And the people who access these services, they don't have any out-of-pocket costs, so they're not going to get bills or debts or fears that, you know, that they can't access it. And I'm going to fund it by 3 things. One is if you're in your career and you're making over $50,000 a year in California, everybody who works and they're making more than $50,000 a year, they'll pay a payroll deduction that'll pay for 1/3 of this. 1/3 will be paid for by bringing together the federal, state, and local dollars that we spend on healthcare and education. We'll pull those together. That pays for 1/3 of it. A lot of money is already going through government on this. And the third part is going to be paid for. I will increase taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations to pay for 1/3 of it. And then, by the way, if the individual corporations or the wealthy individuals or the wealthy corporations flee the state, well, I got news for them. If they want to sell goods and services in the state of California, and of course they do because we're the most populous state, they're going to pay those goods and services will pay a surcharge on them, particularly. So as if it didn't make any difference whether they stayed or left. They're still going to pay for high-quality education and health care for all the residents of the state of California. And there's no escape. You can run away, but you have to sell your goods and services in California, and that's where I put the surcharge on.
Yeah.
So it makes and by the way, once you put this into effect, all the wealthy people will be flooding into California because we're going to be pumping kids out of our schools that are well educated.
You know something that I noticed that was like real crazy, like Switzerland. There's an economic system where essentially they have good capitalism and good socialism, and the whole idea was you want to take care of the rich, the CEOs. You want to have a nice city for the CEOs to live in because they got to live in the same places where they're working. And so you want a good social, safety net. You want good parks. You want the homeless, taken care of. So you don't want to have all those problems. So I forget what the model was, but I want to say Switzerland for some reason. But the idea of Oh yeah, no, the idea of by actually, raising, like having a universal health care, having universal college, having universal child care, somehow that's going to take away from the public treasury and then we're all going to be depleted. But it does the opposite because these are places where people want to live, and so their capitalistic markets are doing great. The Germany does socialism and capitalism better than us. So does a lot of those European countries.
Well, I consider myself a progressive capitalist.
Nice.
I'm very comfortable with 50% of the economy being controlled by the public sector and 50% of the economy being controlled by the private sector. But keep in mind, the private sector has to be subject to oversight so they don't exploit workers.
That sounds perfect. If you told me it was the corporations will figure out how to get a piece somehow. They'll figure it out. Even if you try to say, I'm going to get rid of all the corporations, one of them will still stick around somehow.
Well, as I said, I'm comfortable as the next governor. 50% is run by the public sector, federal, state, local, regional, county government, and 50% being run by the private sector with proper oversight. So
that's perfect. I think that's a perfect ratio. Instant runoff voting? Where are you at on instant runoff voting?
And by the way, I have a whole plan to boost small businesses in the state, but I'll wait till you ask me about that. But
I'll ask you that. That'll be my last question.
Okay, go ahead.
Instant runoff voting. Ranked choice voting. You heard of ranked choice elections?
Well, it came here in San Francisco. We applied it to our elections, and as a progressive Democrat, I supported the reform, and I do support it.
Awesome. You've seen how it works through 10, 20 years? Y'all have had it forever, haven't you?
No. We the first time we implemented, I would say, in the last 15 years.
And so, at least you got a decade on how it's worked. What were some unforeseen consequences? Because it seems to me Colorado has a lot of democracy, but we don't have ranked choice elections, so it feels like that's the last major step in terms of, empowering the voter for a presidential system. Now, we might go to a party system later on, but I feel like to rank your candidates, I don't know. I just, would you say it's successful? Let's just ask that. Would you say it's been a success in the last 15 years or not?
Well, it's resulted in corporate Democrats coming to power, which really are not very helpful to the middle class or low, moderate, middle. So low, moderate, middle income people, they're left out. We have had ranked choice voting over a considerable amount of time. Keep in mind, I am I believe, the most corrupt urban political machine in the state of California in America. It's in San Francisco. It produced Gavin Newsom.
Right.
So in the sense that it's a progressive reform to try to empower progressive ideas, but because it's overlaid by a very corrupt machine here in San Francisco, it has led to corporate Democrats who really don't support progressive reform, like London Breed, who's the current mayor, and Gavin Newsom, who's the current governor. So, and of course, both of those people are protégés of Willie Brown, who's one of the most corrupt politicians in California history.
So, I really liked your top 4 issues a lot because I feel like just a willingness to say that you want to declare a war on poverty. Like, you know what? This poverty is a bunch of bull. We're going to get rid of it. Like, I feel like I haven't been hearing that enough from politicians because we brag about being, the wealthiest or one of the top wealthiest countries in the world. We shouldn't have poor people or homeless people in our streets. Homelessness, I think, is for me, it seems like it's an easy fix, right? They don't have a home, build them a home. But poverty, oh my goodness, how are we going to we're going to have a lot of conversations. It's going to be some long-term projects, but it's going to be we're going to have to attack it with some major initiatives, right? So,
to end homelessness, poverty, mass incarceration, and the war on drugs, they will require comprehensive programs with, laying out what we're going to do as fast as we can to turn the corner on all 4 of those issues. And a lot is at stake because no other state is trying to do that. So California is, before the pandemic, California was the 5th largest economy in the world. Here in San Francisco, we have 77 billionaires. We have these powerful industries, high tech and the Hollywood industry. A lot of people are making a lot of money in California, and what we can do is channel all of this energy in California to tackle those 4 crises and solve them. And I'm not talking about governing by press conference or just trying to do things on the side to make it look like you're doing something.
Right.
I'm done with that. I'm done with that. By the way, Newsom's an expert on that. He was doing that when he was mayor, and he's done it as governor. And of course, I think people caught on to it, and it could be a contributing factor why he may be fired next Tuesday.
Well, where I was leading to is I'm for universal health care, but if you do it right, it could be a very expensive program. And then universal basic income, I really love the idea of just putting money straight into the pockets of the people. And then jobs program, I like that too, but I feel like amongst progressives, it seems like we kind of argue and debate because I would take universal basic income and kind of throw the rest away, but I think that's the fear, isn't it? But with the jobs program, I guess, what do you think about those 3 issues? Universal basic income, universal health care, and a jobs program.
Okay, my top priority, which is, part of like an umbrella to address everything that we're talking about, is we have to enact high-quality education and health care, cradle to grave, for all the residents of California, because that's going to jumpstart small businesses, opportunity. People, if you're only making $14 an hour, which is the current minimum wage, and if you can get some additional training and education, you can make $25 an hour, maybe additional training, you can get up to $45 an hour. People are going to do that because I want to trigger ambition and opportunity, and I think if you give people access to high-quality education, healthcare, cradle to grave, that means they're going to have good healthcare, so they don't have to worry about that. And if they have access to education and training, then they know it's lifelong. So if you make a bad decision in high school, it doesn't mean that 5 years later you can't come back and become a computer technician or an auto mechanic, which is all driven by computers now.
Right.
So basically, I want we don't give up on anyone. As long as you're alive and breathing in California, if you're ambitious, you can seize opportunity, get ahead, get your hourly rate of pay up, and sky's the limit, which is exactly what I would want to do. And I want to make sure that people are not burdened with these huge debts related to health care and education. I'm going to eliminate all that. So in other words, if you're a student or a patient, or you're accessing education and health care, there's not going to be any bills, there's not going to be any debts, there's not going to be any fears or anxiety. All that's erased. So all you concentrate on is staying healthy and educating yourself so you make more money so you can be happier. You got more opportunity ahead of you. And what we do is we only make sure the super rich get richer, and the rest of us, we get pushed down the economic ladder, and a lot of people get discouraged. And I want to reverse that, because we invest in people. People are the most important resource in the state, and if we can trigger ambition and opportunity so people want to get ahead, I think that's how we rebuild our economy, so it's not only the 5th largest economy in the world. I want to work to make sure it's the 4th largest economy in the world if it was a nation, and we can do it with that kind of program. But let's get back to your set of issues. Okay, which was let's hit those 4 again.
The jobs program and universal basic income.
Okay, the jobs program is that, again, it's tied to education and training. And which we want to set that up so people, and by the way, I want to increase the minimum wage from 14, which is what it is currently, to 16. And then I want every 12 months to have a cost of living increase on the minimum. So the floor, I want to make 16 immediately if I get to the governor's office, and I'll push that through the legislature. I want to jump it from 14 to 16.
I think your jobs program would come with your massive amounts of money invested into education and healthcare. That would create a bunch of jobs, would it not?
Exactly, exactly right. And like for example, the UC system, the state university system, and the community college system. I want to make sure those are operating 24/7. I want the facilities to be operating 24/7 so people can access the education. So you don't have to be on a wait list. You can get the education you need when you need it to get ahead. And I have no problem with people going to school, between 6 p.m. and midnight. It's no big deal for me.
Do you have any UBI Dreams for California?
Let's say that again.
Universal basic income for California.
Okay, well that can be part of the comprehensive program to end poverty. So we can experiment with that. We can see what works, what doesn't work, but that would be a component to end poverty.
So you would be in favor of like a pilot program?
And I am definitely interested in that. Go ahead.
You would be okay with I'm just trying to clarify your perspective. You'd be okay with a pilot program of like 100 or maybe 1,000 people and see how that goes, like for a year or something? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would do it on a much bigger scale. But the key thing is you have to stabilize people economically, so they're not worried about being evicted. They're not worried about becoming homeless. And then I want to make sure that if they're a single parent, their kids, even at birth, there can be high quality daycare that the single parent can take the child to a high quality daycare, and then the adult can continue with their education, and they can also work part time or full time. And where they're juggling those three things. But I want to make sure that if you're an adult and you have school age kids or young kids, you have a high quality program that you can put them in and you don't have to pay for it. And then that allows you to further your training and education, and also you can work part time or full time. So and I have no problem with a parent or a single parent putting a child in the daycare to go work at a part time job. I think that's fine. Because I think when people are working and juggling the family responsibilities, it all reinforces each other, and the kids see, hey, my mom had to go to work, or my dad had to go to work. And so it's sending out the message that, education, work, and child care, we have to make sure it's all being done properly, so people are not held back. A lot of people just get discouraged because they're just overwhelmed with all of all of these fears, all these anxieties. I'm going to break all that apart.
Well, capitalism is, essentially in capitalist America, I have to get a wage, rent myself out as a wage slave, or I got to start a business. So you said you had some sort of initiative for small business?
Well, let me tell you what I'm going to do for small business, and I'm all for small business. I want to create more small businesses. And keep in mind that Newsom, when he closed down the economy last year, he destroyed like 40% of the small businesses in the state, and he just didn't care. While at the same time, his businesses were getting a $3 million bailout from the federal government, because he was selling wine, and he had a ski resort, and he had restaurants, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I heard 1/3, but that's a huge hit. 1/3, 40% of all small businesses in California are gone?
Exactly. So what I'm going to do for small business, there are three things. One is, as I said before, I'm taking the minimum wage to 16 with a cost of living increase every 12 months. And if a small business can't meet the $16, let's say that's just too much for them because they're just starting, then I will make sure that the state government subsidizes $3 of every hourly rate of pay up to 3 years.
Nice.
Okay, number two, because I'm making sure that high-quality education and health care, cradle to grave for all residents of the state, is run by the state of California, in partnership with, some private sector actors. What it means is small businesses do not have to pay anything for health care for their workforce. Zero. So let's say a small business was paying out 20% of their gross sales for the health care for their employees. That goes away because the state is going to have a health care high quality health care. It's got nothing to do with your employment. You know, a lot of people don't change employment because they're afraid to lose their health care. I'm going to stop that. And then also 20 cents on every dollar is taken by the private for-profit health insurance companies. I'm eliminating that. You know, we're not going to be making a profit in insurance. We're going to make sure that people have the health care and the education they need when they need it. Okay, so it's about services. It's not about